Story 1. I witnessed a small spat between two people on a flight earlier today regarding their seats, which reminded me of this experience I had about 10 years ago. I was on a flight to attend an annual convention happening on the other side of the country with two of my senior colleagues. It was the night before the first day of the event, so the entire flight practically consisted of people in the same industry. My colleagues were busy greeting or acknowledging people as we were walking along the airplane aisle to get to our seats. I was a rookie at the time. At any rate, a woman in early 30s was sitting in my seat. She was wearing oversized sunglasses along with a pair of studio headphones over her head. Moreover, she rested her hands neatly on her lap and had her head tilted back on the headrest, as if to suggest that she was asleep and not to be disturbed. Give me a break. Half of the plane hadn't finished boarding by this point. She ignored several of my initial verbal attempts at getting her attention. She ignored half a dozen gentle taps on her shoulder. When she finally awakened, I tried explaining to her that she was in my seat, but her response was to point at her headphones, then shrugging with both her hands upturned to gesture that she couldn't hear what I was saying. "You could try taking them off." Nothing, still playing dumb with no intention to take off her headphones. I think the reader can appreciate that I was starting to impede aisle traffic by this point. Not giving up, I then showed her my boarding pass, pointing at the printed seat number. She then mouthed, "Oh," as if she just understood what I've been saying all along. She then tucked in her knees half an inch into the seat and motioned me to pass by her like that. I had briefly considered whether to give her the crotch or the ass, but I chose to insist. When she tucked in her knees again at my another futile attempt at getting her to move to her own seat, I just about had it. I raised my voice and said out loud that, "I'm not the one getting in, you are." To which she instantly recoiled and moved to the window seat without a word. The guy who was waiting behind me in the aisle gave me a thumbs up as he passed by. I thought that was that, but she was apparently still salty and wanted satisfaction. After the plane had taken off, she tapped on my shoulder and said she'd be open to switching seats with me if I wanted. I politely declined, albeit with an almost amused look in my face. Later, I was casually conversing with my colleagues seated across from me in their aisle seats. She tapped on my shoulders again and said that her offer extended to your friends. I gave a light chuckle and said, "Sure." I knew what she was getting at along with her condescension, that she was someone in the industry. Too late. I already texted my colleagues after that little incident of ours, and both of them had Mariah carried her. She later circled back on this, whether if I'd asked my colleagues about their seat yet, to which I replied in the negative. She asked if I could please ask them, to which I'd always reply in the positive, "Sure," in a light-hearted manner. This exact exchange occurred between us not once, not twice, but thrice in the course of a 6-hour flight. To this day, I've never come across her professionally, so I'm not sure what exactly she was trying to achieve there. Story 2. If you look at my previous stories, saying this like if I'm famous, geez, that was selfish, you'll check the quick context. So on to the story. Hello, thanks for calling Marvelous Mobile for your marvelous needs. How can I help you? Hello, I called before to unlock my phone. They gave me a timeline of 2 days, and they didn't send me the unlock code for my phone. It was a Motorola. Sure thing, I can check on that. I'm just going to ask you some info to proceed. They give me the info, and it enters the account. After checking, the first thing that popped up is that the account had an outstanding balance of $102 in the account. When there's an outstanding balance, for protocol and policies, we cannot unlock a device unless the account is in good standings. Also, since this is important, usually we have an 8 business days grace period before the account becomes suspended for non-payment. Also, the phone was not active with our company. To unlock an Android device, usually we have to file a form, and after a few days the customer receives the unlocking code for the device. I see. According to what I'm seeing, for the moment the account is showing an outstanding balance of $102. So for the moment, in order to start the unlocking process, we might need to make sure that the account is in good standings. Yeah, and why's that? The phone is literally paid off. It is my property now. You should just allow me to unlock it. Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. You know this is close to blackmail, right? Forcing me to pay to get something is my property already. The phone is paid off. It doesn't belong to you people anymore. I see. Once again, I really apologize for this. Usually is because of policies. Unlocking the phone requires a certain process. And yeah, once again, one of the things is the account status. Well, yes, but your policies should not apply in this case, since technically the phone is no longer yours. It's not something you manage anymore, so you should just give me the unlock code. I wish I could, but once again, unless the account is in good standings and the outstanding balance is paid, the process for the unlock can either be delayed or not completed at all, which should also not cause a problem. I still have plenty of time. Don't you have 8 days of grace to complete the payment? Well, yes, but that grace period is before the account gets suspended for non-payment. The outstanding balance is just for what it wasn't paid. And once again, if the payment is not completed, the unlock process cannot be completed. But why? The phone is not even yours. I paid it off, therefore is mine. You should have no deal with the phone anymore. But the phone was purchased with us. Yes, is your property since the device is paid for. But in order to use it in another company, it needs to be unlocked. Being honest, what we can do is that we complete the payment, and after that, we can complete the form, and you should receive the unlock code later in 48 hours. Another 2 days? Why is that? 2 days have already passed. What happened to the first form and unlock code? Once again, what could have happened is that since the account is not in good standings, the order failed. Why? It's not even half of the 8 days grace period. Why don't you give me the unlock code, so we can move on from this? I promise I'll pay later on this week. I just want the code. As much as I'd love to do it, once again, to give the code, the account needs to be in good standings. Side note, we don't really have a way to generate an unlock code, since the only thing we can unlock at the moment are iPhones, but Android phones require the form, so no, we cannot generate the form. That's ridiculous. The phone is not even yours anymore. I paid it off, so it's my phone. I told you I'd pay you later on, and 2 days passed, so you should just give me the code. I talked before with a lady from Amusing Mobile. It was a representative from another mobile company, which for obvious reasons I'll not reveal. And the agent made the process with a lady listening to it. She heard the agent say it would get the unlocking code soon. I see. I'm sorry I can't do that. You know I can involve lawyers in this, right? This literally have no sense. I see. I'm sorry for your decision. The amount of times I heard this is so funny that is almost ridiculous. I can get lawyers involved, and the lady from Amusing Mobile will be an amazing witness for this, you know? I see. I'm sorry for your decision, and I understand it as well. Anything else for the moment, just in case? Nope, not at all. You can wait to hear from my lawyers, though. Goodbye. And the case ended. Didn't bother to check the notes. Needless to say, I didn't even finish the form because what was the point? It would be rejected. Story 3. Okay, so this just happened, and it may be the most cliched Karen encounter I've ever had. My flatmate's friend has sensory issues and thus strict preferences when it comes to food. I do our grocery shopping each week. He works full-time, while I'm disabled and unable to work, so I do what I can to keep the workload fair, especially since he's also my carer, and always get him these same damper bread rolls with no seeds. They're the softest bread available, and it's not unusual for me to get the last one on the shelf of a Friday, which was what happened today. I should also add that my genetic disorder, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, means that my skin doesn't age normally. So while I'm turning 32 this year, I'm often mistaken for anywhere from 17 to 25 years old, depending on the situation and how I'm dressed. Not even half a minute after I'd put the rolls in my trolley, I heard a woman behind me doing that inhaling through her teeth sound, followed by an ah. I turned around and was greeted by the sight of a super stereotypical Karen in every sense except for her hair, which was past her shoulders, but still straight and blonde with badly done, stripy highlights. She had the 2 sizes too small yoga pants and way too much gold jewelry. She was also wearing sunnies inside the supermarket. With that simpering, wincing expression on her orange face, she said, "I'm so sorry about this, love, but I'm going to have to ask you to give me that bread." I couldn't fight the instinct and immediately burst out laughing. The whole scenario was just too much for me. Karen, hand on hip. What the hell's so bloody funny? Well, you must be joking, right? There's no need to be so bloody rude. Give me that bread now, or I'll be having words with your parents. Me, bristling at being spoken down to, yet again. You're not having my bread, Karen. Leave me the heck alone. And I walked away. I heard huffing and stammering behind me, but just ignored it and carried on with my shopping. I thought that was it. But of course, Karen needed to try and put me in my place, as I'm sure she'd have said it. She showed up several aisles later with a member of staff. But here's the thing. I'm a disabled woman who shops for the same exact things on the same days every week, and I've had to ask staff for help on plenty of occasions. Many of the staff at that supermarket know me fairly well, so when Karen showed up with Janelle, fake name, pointing aggressively at that little jerk right there, me, she was probably quite surprised when Janelle said, "Oh hi, you're a bit later than usual today, aren't you? Everything okay?" "Yeah, it's just been one of those days, you know?" Karen, interjecting, "That's the thieving brat who stole that bread right out of my trolley and refused to give it back." Janelle, side-eyeing Karen, "Is that really what happened?" she asks me. Actually, I literally just got to the shelf first. Karen here demanded I give it to her, and I guess she didn't know how to handle being told no. "I'm sorry you've had your time wasted like this." She's lying. Where are your parents, you little jerk? How about we just review the security footage and clear this up, so we can all get on with our days, I suggest. That won't be. Janelle tries to talk, but Karen cuts her off. Excuse me? Are you calling me a liar? I have never been so offended in all my life. I will not have my character assassinated by a freaking checkout chick. Yep, she genuinely said that. Janelle, with a frustrated sigh, please just carry on with your shopping. I've got this from here. Janelle tells me. Thanks, hun. Good luck. And I went to leave, knowing that hanging around would have only further inflamed the situation. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Janelle tells Karen. Karen started mouthing off at that, but I don't remember exactly what she said. It included something about my parents and getting Janelle fired, but I was out of there fairly quickly. I didn't see Karen again after that, and I don't know whether she left of her own accord, but I didn't hear any huge commotion, so I'm guessing she eventually did. Must remember to contact the store and give Janelle's boss good feedback about how brilliantly she handled it all. Here's hoping I don't encounter Karen again, but if I do, I'll be sure to tell you guys about it. Haha. What an absolutely absurd creature. Story 4. My daughter is 17 and a senior at the local high school. She's always been a good student, keeps her grades up, and has never been in trouble. I raised her to stand up for herself and not let people walk all over her. Maybe that's what got her into this mess, or maybe it's what saved her. It all started about 3 weeks ago. My daughter came home from school looking frustrated, which isn't like her. She's usually pretty upbeat about her day. I asked her what was wrong because she looked upset. She told me about her English teacher who kept making comments about her clothes, even though she wasn't breaking any dress code rules. She said she had checked the handbook twice to make sure. When I asked what kind of comments the teacher was making, my daughter explained that yesterday the teacher said her shirt was too tight, but it wasn't. Then that day, the teacher said her skirt was too short, but my daughter had measured it. It went past her fingertips when her arms were at her sides, just like the rules required. I looked at what she was wearing. It was a perfectly normal outfit, a fitted but not tight sweater and a knee-length skirt. Nothing inappropriate at all. I asked if she had talked to anyone else about this situation. She said a few of her friends mentioned that the teacher does this to certain girls, always the ones she doesn't like for some reason. But the teacher never actually writes them up or sends them to the office. She just makes these comments in front of everyone. I told her to document everything and let me know if it got worse. I figured it was just a teacher having a bad attitude, nothing more serious than that. Boy, was I wrong. The next week, things escalated. My daughter came home even more upset. She told me the teacher did it again that day. She had been wearing jeans and a regular t-shirt, and there was nothing wrong with her outfit. I asked her what exactly the teacher had said. My daughter explained that the teacher said she was being disruptive with her clothing choices and that she needed to consider how she was representing herself and the school. Then the teacher made her stand up in front of everyone while she pointed out what she thought was wrong with my daughter's outfit. I told her that was harassment and that I was calling the school the next day. My daughter asked me to wait and let her try talking to the teacher first. She didn't want to make things worse. Against my better judgment, I agreed to let her handle it. My daughter is mature for her age, and I wanted to respect that. But I also told her that if anything else happened, I was getting involved immediately. The conversation she had with her teacher didn't go well. She told me she tried talking to the teacher after class. She asked why the teacher kept singling her out when she was following the dress code. She even brought the handbook to show the exact rules. When I asked what the teacher said, my daughter explained that the teacher got really angry. She said my daughter was being disrespectful and that she knows inappropriate clothing when she sees it. Then the teacher said if my daughter had a problem with her teaching methods, she could find another class. I told her that was enough, and I was calling the principal the next day. But before I could make that call, everything exploded. The next morning, my daughter wore the same outfit she'd worn the day before, the jeans and t-shirt that her teacher had criticized. She wanted to make a point that she wasn't doing anything wrong. I was at work when my phone rang. It was the principal. He told me I needed to come to school immediately because there had been an incident involving my daughter. I asked what kind of incident and if she was hurt. He said she was okay now, but there had been an altercation with one of her teachers. He asked if I could get there as soon as possible. I dropped everything and drove to the school. When I got there, my daughter was in the principal's office with a blanket wrapped around her. She was shaking and looked like she'd been crying. I asked what happened and if she was okay. She told me the teacher had lost it completely and grabbed her shirt and ripped it. The principal stepped in to explain what had happened. According to multiple witnesses, my daughter had walked into English class wearing the same outfit from the day before. Her teacher immediately started yelling about defiance and disrespect. When my daughter said that she was following the dress code, the teacher completely snapped. The teacher had grabbed my daughter's shirt at the collar and yanked it so hard that it tore down the front, exposing her. Then she'd started pulling at the shirt, trying to rip it off completely while screaming about appropriate clothing. Several students had immediately jumped up to help. Some girls surrounded my daughter to block her from view, while others physically stepped between her and the teacher. One student had called for security on their phone. By the time adults arrived, the teacher was still trying to get past the students to reach my daughter. I asked where this teacher was now. The principal said she had been removed from the building and they were conducting a full investigation. I told him that wasn't enough and I wanted the police called. She had assaulted my daughter. The principal said he understood my concern, but maybe we should discuss other options first. I told him there were no other options. She had physically attacked a minor and exposed her in front of her classmates. I demanded he call the police right now or I would do it myself. The principal reluctantly agreed to contact law enforcement. Within an hour, officers arrived to take statements from everyone involved. The other students corroborated exactly what happened, and several had even recorded parts of it on their phones. The teacher was arrested that afternoon and charged with assault and child endangerment. The school board met in emergency session and voted to terminate her employment immediately. But the story doesn't end there. During the investigation, it came out that this teacher had a history of targeting female students. Several other parents came forward with similar stories about inappropriate comments and harassment. The district had received complaints before, but had only given her verbal warnings. It also turned out that she'd been having financial problems and had apparently been taking out her frustrations on students she perceived as having more than she did. My daughter, who dresses nicely but modestly, had somehow become a target for her displaced anger. The teacher tried to claim that she was just enforcing school policy and that my daughter had been defiant. But with multiple witnesses and video evidence, her story fell apart quickly. She was convicted on both charges. The judge sentenced her to 6 months in jail and ordered her to pay for my daughter's therapy and medical expenses. She also lost her teaching license permanently. My daughter handled the whole thing with incredible strength. She testified clearly about what happened. The other students who helped her became close friends, and she says the experience taught her how important it is to stand up for others. The school implemented new policies about how teachers can address dress code concerns, and they now require multiple staff members to be present for any disciplinary action involving clothing. As for my daughter, she's doing well. She finished the school year strong and is looking forward to college. She still stands up for herself, but now she knows that sometimes adults can be wrong too, and that's not her fault. I'm proud of how she handled herself, and I'm grateful for the classmates who protected her when she needed it most. Story 5. Message from my mother to my wife, in response to me going no contact after years of abuse. Using a fake name for my wife. Emily, just so you know, I blame you and your mother for turning my son against me and my family. I saw this coming before you were married, but my son wouldn't see it then. I wonder how your mother would feel if the tables were turned and my son manipulated and controlled you. What if he put boundaries in to stop you speaking to your mother? Ask her how she would feel then. When does it stop? Emily? What next? Have a thought and think how we are feeling. I am his mother, and you have turned him against me. How could you possibly know how it feels for a mother to have her child not speak to her? My mother was very manipulating from when we started dating. My wife was never welcome on Christmas Day, but my mother still expected me to be with her on Christmas. I refused after the first year because it was awful. When I told my mom I was going to propose, she broke down in tears because she was losing me. I left home at 16 and never went back. Met my wife at 24. At my wedding, my mother gave a 10-minute speech and didn't once mention my wife, just spoke about how she was losing me. Slowly over the years, the discourse wore me down until I had a full-on mental breakdown. I'm still in therapy 3 years later and have had to go full no contact because my mother just will not allow me to happily have a wife. She even went as far to write to me, my wife and our non-existent children. We are trying but not there yet, out of her will to spite us. No contact was always something my wife was against until I made the choice myself. She never wanted me to choose. She did everything to meet my mother's needs the entire time I was sick, even going so far as to send messages and make calls when my panic attacks prevented me from it. She would include her in group chats, send birthday cards, presents for every occasion, but any act that didn't physically put me at the other end of the country next to my mother was a betrayal. My mother forced the choice on me. I have had to come to the sad conclusion that she isn't willing to change. Before going no contact happened, there were months of trying to establish basic boundaries, in particular during my decline into a mental health crisis. She would expect phone calls every day or every other day, but I couldn't deal with the constant conflict. We would agree to weekly conversations, which would work for 2 weeks before a tirade of, "This isn't working. I need you to call me more. I need more conversation with you." This conflict just made my mental health even worse. So I would re-establish the boundary and we would try again. 6 months later, and then she called my wife to say the worst things in the world to her. How she was a vile, manipulative witch, how she had stolen her son, ruined her family, and on and on and on. That day was the day I described as the mask slipping, and I finally saw my mother's behavior for what it really was, an outright attack on the woman I loved. That day was the day, as I have seen some people describe it, that I grew a shiny new spine. If it's a choice between my mother and the woman who has supported me through my darkest days and stood by me, the woman who made every effort to make my mother a part of our world, well, that became an easier choice that day. This screenshot was from like 3 months after that. 3 years later, her behavior has only become more extreme. Anyways, a lot to unpack in all that. Entitled, Narcissistic Parents Have No Right to Anything from You. Being your egg sperm donor makes them think you owe them something. You don't owe them jack. Story 6. Second story. Since the first one was much more appreciated than I could have hoped, I began looking into old anecdotes, and I remembered this gem from 2011. Again, a small, preemptive excuse since English is not my first language. Sadly or luckily, I don't remember any more stories that fit this particular sub. That said, here we go. At that time I was 26, just out of the university with my title and master both completed by December 2010. Almost immediately, I went into a big engineering company, specialized in tall buildings. I was still green with little to no experience in the real world, and by nature, I'm also evasive when it comes to conflict, so I'm not exactly the wise choice when it comes to clashing against aggressive or too dominant people. Still, I was able to fake confidence and capable enough to quickly gain the trust of clients. Because of that, I was already managing projects with some degree of autonomy at 6 months in the job. That said, it was November, already very warm weather, chilly, so summer in November, and the office was working at its usual pace. That is, calm but 2 steps away from total panic. It was morning when my boss called me. Let's call him Ray. He is a great guy, professional, but often a bit dense when it comes to social cues. To this day, we're still good friends despite both not working there anymore. When I arrive at his desk, he pulls a set of schematics. Hey, I have a meeting this afternoon with this particular client, but I cannot go. They have some kind of issues, so it's important that someone from the office is there if things go difficult. Difficult, I asked. Yeah, they screwed up and want to blame us. Still, everything is on the drawings. You shouldn't have any issues. Sure, I'll take it. The meeting time came, and I went off the taxi in front of this 22-story office building. The lobby was already finished in floors of black marble and roof in white marble with diffuse white lightning. Round, double-height columns in stainless steel. As I enter, something calls my attention. There are scratches on the floor. Oh, also in the columns. Heck, also in the doors. This is bad. These are telltale signs of horrible construction management. I take the stairs to the 4th floor, and the construction auditor, Phil, receives me. He is a large guy, with a short beard and stern but amicable face. So, you are X? What happened to Ray? Phil asked. Hi, yes, he sent me to be in his place. Well, we are about to start. Just sit by my side and don't intervene unless it is necessary. Anything I need to know? I ask. He smiles back at me with a grin. Just wait and enjoy. So, we enter this large improvised meeting room. There is electricity, but the floor is still bare concrete and the doors are temporary. The table is enough for maybe 20 people. On the corner, there is a small guy with a curved back and sketchy appearance. He could be described as a weasel in office attire. No one pays any attention to my presence as everyone is taking seats. I sit beside Phil, near the middle of the table. The weasel on the far head and the closest head is still empty. That guy is the construction manager. He is blaming us for the screw-up. He says, pointing at the weasel, we wait for maybe 5 minutes with only a rumor of the small conversations in the place. Finally, the door opens and a peacock-like office Chad enters. Black trousers, white and pink vertical striped shirt and big golden sunglasses where a helmet should have been. A large golden watch, kettlebell-sized, completed the image. "Sorry, I'm late. Let's begin the meeting," Chad announces. I assume, for his commanding tone, that he is the representative of the owners. After some minimal greeting to all the people in the room by the architect, he gives the word to Chad. I take a glance at Phil. He is expectant. Now, Chad raises from the table, points to the weasel, and the party starts. "Explain to me how the heck you forgot to build doors for the elevator's machine room. We are already delayed a month. You made a freaking mess in the lobby, and now we have to demolish a wall so the elevator people can enter." Okay, sir," the weasel answered. "First of all, these changes have been asked by you. You asked for the lobby to be left ready while I still have to work with people there, and you have it fully scratched. How the heck is that my responsibility?" Turns out, Chad and the weasel not only were severely unprofessional, but also hated each other with such passion that they had to be put in opposite sides of the table because more than once they went too close to a fistfight. They discussed screaming at each other for maybe 5 minutes. Chad is fully aggressive and red, attacking relentlessly. The manager, just as his appearance suggests, sneaks in between all the attacks and deflects responsibilities, blaming everything under the sun. The rest of the assistants are just expecting to let time pass quickly and leave. But Phil is happy. He was one step away from having some popcorn. I lean to him and whisper, "So they forgot an access for the machine room." Not only that, but the weasel also declared some construction molds as stolen, and they made an investigation. Turns out they are still inside that closed room. "What?" I ask a bit louder. "Hey kid," Chad addresses me disrespectfully. "Shut up." And then he goes back to the fight. After some more punches back and forth, the weasel is running out from ways to deflect his mistake. He tries one more. "But this wasn't our fault. The door was not in the structural engineer's drawings." He forms a smug smile. "Plus, Ray didn't even come to the meeting. If any penalties are to be applied, it should be for them for their incompetence." Boy, that was my cue. I clear my throat but fail in the first impression, entering in a timid way, "Well?" "Shut up, kid." The weasel snaps and looks to Phil. "Phil, keep your assistant quiet." I decided to make them understand more clearly. I pull the set of schematics, letting them fall heavily over the table and catching the attention of both Chad and the weasel. Over the schematics, I put my construction helmet, with the logo of the engineering firm. Silence takes the place. If I may, I now speak in front of a pale weasel and a Chad who internally debates if showing shame for calling me kid or do a victory lap around the weasel. I'm actually a structural engineer from X company, and Ray sent me to represent him because his schedule was full. Mind if we check what appears on the drawings? Here we are. Yes, as you can see, the door is here, and I think this cannot be attributed to confusion from structural design. I agree. Phil comments with a huge smile. The rest of the table is trying to hide their amusement. I continue. So, that settles it. I can make a procedure here for the demolition and installation of the access, or if you prefer I can send it approved by Ray by tomorrow. Everyone is silent in a second of contained storm. But Phil isn't done yet. He leans in and puts his hands over the table. "Now, we need to see what we will do to recover the supposedly stolen equipment that is still trapped inside the machine room. And what will you do about the 2 workers you fired this morning?" He looks to the weasel, who is just about to melt and escapes by the first crack he can find. Chad now turns into a raging volcano. He was so furious that his blood pressure could have been measured in atmospheres. "You fired people without proof?" And then another maybe 5 minutes of berating exploded until the architect, who was supposed to be coordinating the meeting, called a truce so they could advance with the problems of the electric and water crews. Phil and I were dismissed, but while the door was closing I could hear Chad screaming again. I sighed, relieved. Truth is, I was shaking a little. What a mess. "Nah, this was a quiet meeting," Phil said, smiling. "Tell Ray he missed a good one. Pleased to meet you, kid." In the end, the construction was finished with 5 months of delay. Both the Weasel and Chad were fired from their respective companies. Ray just laughed at my story and told me it was good that Chad hadn't tried to punch me because he wanted to fight everyone, all the time. I never found those two again, but I found Phil on another project 2 years after. Same mischievous old man. To my luck, to this day I never had another meeting like that dreadful one.